Perfect. Thank you so much. So I want to thank everybody again. My name is Ian McClarty. I'm president of PhoenixNap. And today we're going to go over the MSSP hype cycle. So very interesting set that we're going to go over. There's definitely a speed issue going on right now, and I'll elaborate more on that in a couple minutes. First off, who are we? Why are we on stage with Vellum? We are an infrastructure as a service provider. We do have worldwide coverage at this point. We are about going on an 11-year-old company, 12-year-old company, depending on how you look at us. We have 550 employees worldwide and growing. So we actually went through mass hiring of all departments across the organization in last year in 2020. And that was due to a lot of growth demand that we were getting from our existing client base. We're on over 15 data center locations. We have 6 global network POPs, and we're across 5 continents at this point. We do have a proven track record of services that are very vendor aligned to our partner ecosystem, and we have won several awards in that space as well over multiple vendor programs. One unique aspect of PhoenixNap, apart from our worldwide coverage, is that we do have a network hub in Phoenix. Our network hub in Phoenix is actually a cloud on-ramp. So the entire metro market is being serviced by our facility for AWS and Google at this point. We're also in talks with some of the other hyperscalers right now to build out and to service the market from our data center. We have become the network hub. But past that, we're very much an infrastructure as a service organization, and we are spread out worldwide. We're pure IaaS, so we're not a managed services company at all. But we work very closely with MSSPs. So MSSPs use our infrastructure services. We service the MSSP market, and we have been doing that since pretty much the beginning of the organization. We tend to align ourselves well to providers that are actually building security services on top of our infrastructure, and we're also a very compliant-focused organization. So the hype cycle today, what does it look like? Well, this is actually the latest from Gartner for 2020. It's actually published in July of 2020, so the new one's not out yet. But the feedback that we are getting and what we're seeing right now is that the hype cycle continues to shrink from a speed perspective. So as an example, when in the innovation trigger all the way to the plateau of productivity would take several years, these are going now into like months and a year for some of these very quickly evolving technologies take a hold. I'm actually going to focus on a couple that are on the hype cycle, and they're actually interrelated here. So confidential compute, I'm going to go into and do a deeper dive on, but it's confidential compute is correlated and related with a couple of others. Multi-cloud is one of them. So multi-cloud key management as a service is very much in that confidential compute ecosystem. So is enterprise key management. These three are very well aligned. Immutable infrastructure is something that we do quite a bit, and we have to because it's usually your last line of defense when it comes to your data. So making sure that at least your backups are immutable, and so that if there's ransomware or there's been a compromise that's been long-standing, that at least you have some fallback data to work with, so you can recover from a total disaster or from just a ransomware that you don't want to pay. So the immutable infrastructure is becoming a very much a core tenant, and it's very well aligned to backup and recovery services and disaster recovery services. So, from an ecosystem perspective, we do see this trend of confidential compute starting to move very quickly. It's no longer in the innovation trigger. It's actually more in the going towards the trough of disillusionment. And the reason why I say that the first version of confidential compute that came out from an Intel perspective. So SGX is something I'm going to bring up. It actually was very small. It was only about 128 megs of enclave data that you can actually put in there. That's actually in the new versions of chipsets that's grown up to 3.5 gigs. And so there's an expectation of what you can actually do with confidential compute in some of the enclaves that I'll do a deeper dive on. So I'm going to change gears for 1 second and just go over more of a overall ecosystem perspective. What's going on to the MSSP today with technologies and what's going on because of the current crisis of 2020 and this year. So obviously things that enable the remote workforce, like unified communications, telepresence, VDI, authentication management, CASB, all took front and center. That's a lot of investment was being done in that space. A lot of speed also had to be done for enablement. Not exactly the cleanest setups or the most mature setups were done in that space. So you know, good enough was a lot of momentum that actually happened. Because of this, new technologies have emerged to support some of those needs. The physical offices were emptying, right? And so the increase in video surveillance, or actually, you know, we actually have seen an increase, from feedback, seen an increase of theft, of physical theft around buildings and facilities, right? Because there's less people around. So there's been an increase in theft that has happened. So more on the protecting what was physically there before has become a you know, on the physical perimeter side has become very important. And obviously, because of all these different reasons and factors, you know, security, storage, and data centers continue to evolve and adapt to the changing market trends. But then today we're looking at like today, right? And today, like a lot of what I said is actually becoming kind of an afterthought, because now companies are starting to focus more on you know, coming back into the office. So the remote workforce protection has kind of changed and skewed, and it's starting to become an afterthought. And then now the physical security and the rebounding is starting to come back. And again, that's not true across every single market, but we're starting to see some of that even in Arizona right now. So it's definitely happening, and we do have a pretty good national presence and input from our partner ecosystem. So we're starting to see quite a bit of that starting to rebound. So some of the more like, hey, I need to have worry more about a remote workforce. It's still front and center, but it's becoming less. And then, which does leave a couple opportunities here. A MSSP, knowing that some of these systems were set up not to the better business practices, that were set up in a rush and quickly, there is an opportunity here for MSSPs to go in and actually talk about, you know, what can they do to true that up, you know, so there is some of that conversation that can happen still. It shouldn't be forgotten, because a lot of companies may not go 100%, especially when it comes to IT departments. They may go partial remote workforce, partial in the office, right? So there's going to be maybe a hybrid model, and when you do have a hybrid model, it still is very relevant to have that remote workforce being supported. So there is an opportunity there for MSSPs right now. There's always opportunities and challenges. So that's one thing that's happening. And also, as companies are becoming more in from a remote workforce perspective, you know, programs that may have not been at the forefront, like more security awareness programs and education and training programs, may actually become back to the fold and may become more relevant. So that's another opportunity there for MSSPs to consider. So I kind of hit up on a couple of different things, right? Educating the customer because of these different reasons. Build up a trusted vendor ecosystem that you can support, and that will support you. It really is. There is a lot of opportunities for MSSPs, and there always will be opportunity for MSSPs to basically to even take what has been deployed today and just to true it up. I mean, so that's really, in essence, a lot of the endpoint efforts and a lot of the compliance efforts that are going on. It really should be focused more around what's going on from a true up perspective at this point. So a couple different. This came from Spiceworks, and just an interesting observation here. So there's always opportunity for security services, but so from a budget perspective, if you look at 2020 and you think of like hosted services, right, things that people wanted to get remote workforce up and running, you see the increase as 13%. So you typically where that would be a 9% gain for security services, right, from a spend perspective on a budget. That went up to 13%. I mean, there's no magic here where the money, the allocation budgets come from. So you can see like the last year's spend was really focused on like, how do we get the services out of our facility even, or how do we get into a hosted environments? How do we go more VDI? How do we go into like a third-party ecosystem so they can still support scale out? Things that are very hard for corporations to do, especially when they're dealing with remote workforces and they're geared towards that. So a lot of enterprise customers actually started moving down to hosted solution route, which makes sense. The people that do it well, but that left a vacancy there in security services. And 2021 is projected to come back in. So again, going back to that rebound effort, MSSPs actually should see more of should be tapped more on the shoulders by enterprises. And there's a strong opportunity here from a budget reallocation perspective. So that's the reason for this slide. I kind of hit upon a couple of things that we do as an organization that marry up to security services. It really, I'll go into a deeper dive on SGX, but we have a couple of different product lines that are focused on, I would say, security compliance. So when you think of like the cloud replication and connectivity that we do, we have different flavors. We have disaster recovery services that are also under that umbrella, and then managed Office Backup 365 is also there. Now, the importance of backups and replication, again, especially when you put up immutable behind it, that's something that we do with our backup and replication systems. Make it is give the offer to make them immutable, so you at least have a secure data set you can work with that you can trust. And then we go into data security cloud, which is very complex. Actually, it's really geared towards more of an MSSP and a compliant friendly organization. Again, we tend to be a backend provider for MSSPs, so they can better engage the front end client, and we support them on the backend when it comes to things that we can scale off from an infrastructure perspective and where they don't want to spend capital. Those are things that we do very well as a company. So under confidential compute itself, there's second gen of SGX, and SGX is really the software guard encryption layer. So it's basically, think of like hardware encryption that is being done in the system and is exposed to the operating system. So the nice thing about confidential compute is that we as a service provider are never touching the keys. So we're not in the chain of custody of key management. That's actually puts the key management and the encryption side back onto the client. That's one thing that SGX enables, which is very nice. So from a confidential compute side of the house, we actually have a product that we've developed and launched. This isn't anymore like a early beginning thought on the hype cycle. It's actually now into full product release to the market, and we've actually partnered up with a couple of people that have been doing this for many years. So this market is growing, and we do see a growing trend, especially when it comes to cloud native applications and data sharing between organizations, which again, if you look at life sciences, that's become a very big driver. A lot of organizations today that are in the life sciences fields are trying to figure out, especially because of COVID, I mean, they were trying to figure out how do we share data without, in a secure manner that is obfuscated, that doesn't expose any PII information, and how do we do that with each other, right? So that we can actually get some actionable data that we can better fight COVID with, or that we can show results of the FIM data. We've actually been working with multiple life sciences companies in that space to help them out to actually have secure manners for them to be able to share information in a manner that's obfuscated, that is not, and that's a security enclave. So these security enclaves are supported by the SGX platform. We also have another version that, again, MSSPs and ISVs like, which is bare metal cloud. We're one of the first to actually launch SGX-enabled technology inside these infrastructure services. So these are API-driven servers. They are deployed in less than 60 seconds. We write a whole infrastructure as code stack for them, meaning that they're module-driven. They're available to an MSSP or an ISV to develop their own intellectual property and technology stacks on top of. And they are basically there for, again, for some of this massive data sharing that you can do, and also or to develop better like key management systems or enclave technologies around them. This is just a quick overview of what bare metal cloud itself does. So there are dedicated resources. You can even get them on hourly and reserved instances. The deployment stacks are quick. I mean, they're 60 seconds or less. We have also released a lot of code. So these are really meant for a DevOps environment, but MSSP that's supporting DevOps or DevSecOps environments that are growing as well. Today in the market, about 10% of the enterprise space is in the cloud native structure for real. Like they're actually cloud native 100%, or they're cloud native a majority. About 90% of the market is trying to move there though. So that's another opportunity for MSSPs, is to better align themselves to the DevSecOps areas. And so this is actually one way to do that, is by supporting infrastructure like this inside of your MSSP ecosystem. You're better aligned to the DevSecOps departments and to be able to better service them. And again, the fact that we're the only provider right now that is offering an SGX-enabled solution. from an OpEx perspective. So you can just go online, easily purchase, and it's all API driven. We work with a partner ecosystem around that as well. So I'm going to go over SGX a little more. So the SGX technology itself, stack, is also built into our DSC offering. So we use encryption there, and we're using it in a couple different manners. So again, key management as a service is built in. We ourselves are not doing any kind of management of your secure key environment. You can also do encryption. You can actually do your encryption in use as well. You can encrypt your VMs. So that's another use of SGX as well. So, and again, we are not touching the keys around that. So you can actually import them in and just with a simple click of a button, encrypt all your VMs in a more hardware centric manner. Which again, as a service provider, we like that because it takes us out of that chain of liability there, and also gives you more control back. If you're an MSSP or you're an enterprise customer, even the MSSP itself, not holding the keys is a great thing. Putting that back on the client to own that piece of the security puzzle is great. I mean, it gives them more control over it, and also it takes the supporting providers like ourselves and the MSSP out of that equation. So we actually like that. This generation of SGX is the latest and greatest version. There's a couple different things that SGX supports in different technology stacks. One of them are security enclaves, and again, I kind of hit upon that for one of the use cases is data sharing you can do with security enclaves. So think of very customized databases that are set up that are there for data manipulation, but you're not actually exposing data itself. The actual data itself, you're exposing data that can be worked with. So it's all encrypted. So that, even if there's a breach, you cannot see the actual data set itself. You can't touch it. You can't do anything with it. So it's a very secure environment to actually work with. The security enclaves, again, the technology has really grown from like a support perspective. On a single processor, it used to be about 128 megabytes, that it would support on the data set side. Now it's grown up to 3.5 gigs of data, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually, depending on how you expose it, it is quite a bit of a growth in data set, and that's per processor. So it kind of gives you an idea of from an exposure perspective of data sets that are being worked on. And again, they think of them more like not the full data set, but the actual some data set you can work with. So you're not exposing everything out. So it's not like you're exposing the entire database. You're exposing pieces of the database that are going to be worked on, and they're not being exposed. They're actually made available. Is a better word. And you actually work with the encryption, like an encrypted format of that. So it's very helpful for life sciences organizations that are using that today. I do see more and more organizations moving that route when it comes to federated information they want to support and share with each other. I mean, I'll give you an example. Say you're a logistics company and you want to share information that with your customer base. You can do that in such a way now instead of having to expose your actual data set, you can expose pieces of that to a secure ecosystem, and that way you're not in violation of any privacy laws or any actual information sharing. But your end users can actually do some or your partners can do some data mining off of that information without having to anonymize it. In other words, so very very helpful and friendly technology, but that's only one use case of SGX. So SGX, again, it's also meant for encryption certificates and key management. It takes a lot of that, a lot of the overhead out of the system, and lets people build technologies that are able to expose that we no longer have access to any of the certificates or any of the actual keys themselves, which is nice. I mean, it really removes the keys from the kingdom in a sense. The couple of companies that we work with on that are Intel and Fortanix. Intel is developing all of the hardware for that. Fortanix has been developing and been doing this technology for many years, and they do different flavors of this that are very SGX driven. But we've developed this to be also used by any ISV. Our DSC feature stack. So again, a very focused partner enabled solution. We start with DDoS mitigation at the edge. We are all VMware centric. So again, makes it really easy from an audit and compliance perspective, patching perspective, technology stacks that are used by enterprises, very easy for them to leverage. Then we actually bundle and build in backup and recovery services by default. because we believe that's part of the risk compliance ecosystem. It has to be there. So we make that part of a bundled product into the DSC offering. And then we're using the Intel Xeon Scalable clusters that are basically, again, SGX enabled and offering the latest and greatest technology stacks there. And all supported by a 10 gig network, with some pieces actually that go over 100 gig, depending on what portion you're looking at. And it's all handled by HP Nimble arrays and flash storage arrays in the back. And the backup and recovery repositories are actually separated. They're somewhere else. And then we cover that all with endpoint protection from Sophos, and Alert Logic does a lot of our MDR protection. Which again, if you're an MSSP, you may think to yourself, hey, I already have a 24/7 SOC. The nice thing about the Alert Logic is that they can be as far removed, because we also have a 24/7 SOC. They can be as far removed from the equation, or as much upfront as you want them. They're very easy to work with, very portable. So for us, we built some integration from an API perspective back to them, and make the triage and the tickets very easy. It's just as easy to add an MSSP into the mix and have them control the client interaction, and have Alert Logic be a just completely backend provider. And so for us, it's been a good marriage of companies that may have they have competing products, but what is nice about them is you get another set of eyes that is always looking at the ecosystem and is getting the alerts coming back from a supported platform perspective. So very easy to work with. Been very happy with them as a supported vendor. So I hit upon encryption key management implementation. So a couple of things. HSM is basically your hardware encryption support, right? That is the heart of confidential compute. We a couple things that we recommend as better business practices to our clients, right? Is, again, we're providing the infrastructure and the services, the software, the systems. But you still have to put this is where the MSSP can really shine, right? By providing some of the better business use cases for that management of the keys. How obviously rotation is key to, no pun intended, to the equation. But then also making sure that the MSSP is involved in some of this is when MSSP can really shine with technologies like this as an example, where an MSSP has a strong understanding of the technology stack. They have a strong understanding of better business practices, and they educate their end client, because again, a lot of the responsibility is going to be put back on the end client to manage those keys and to the rotations, to have the policies in place, to have the checks and balances, to have the audit proof, right? A lot of the MSSP can guide and can help implement a lot of this infrastructure that I'm showing right here, or a lot of these steps basically. So yeah, that's what the MSSP today can really shine, especially when it comes to confidential compute. It's a newer concept, but a lot of companies need it and they're grasping on it. They love when they hear, hey, the vendor that you're working with no longer has access to your keys. They love it. But sometimes what they don't understand is that there's a lot of work that's going to be put back on them because of that, right? And policy and procedure, and also being able to show audit proof. And so a proper MSSP that really understands that can really guide a client through this entire process. That is where we partner and we work with MSSPs. We do some of that training. We help out from a high level, but at the end of the day, the security is really a responsibility of the client. I mean, it is their security. So all we can do is we can guide, and the MSSP can really help implement. Again, I kind of hit upon a little bit of this, and not just for like myself, but just things to watch out or to look for. I mean, we're very transparent in our technology stacks and what we do, how we do them. If anybody wants to do a deeper dive, we're available. We do have a partner ecosystem, just throwing that out. But it's not about that. It's more about taking an example of the hype cycle, which again in this case was confidential compute, showing how fast it's moving, showing how companies like ourselves are developing products around that, and to have them for the many, right? Not just a one-off. These are things that we built for the many vertical, many use cases, and then be able to support them and scale them out. And so that's something that we are actively doing as an organization. We'll continue to do. But look for partners like that. Look for opportunities at MSSP. It's very hard to scale these things if this is not your core competency. This is what we do. We wake up in the morning. We're like, how can we better scale out infrastructure services? How can we better secure them up? How can we align ourselves better to an ecosystem that is there? And so look for people like that. Look for people that are like-minded like that. We're not here to do managed security services. That's not what we do. We do something very, very point, but we work very well with the MSSP ecosystem. And I'll leave it to that. I mean, and Phelim, thank you very much. If there's any Q&A that's open.
Yeah, well, we had a bit of a debate. So let me fashion that into a question. Well, a few people wanted to know to the extent to which CASP, DLP, IM are the hottest skill sets, and perhaps not software engineers that understand Langsec or HA systems. That was from Elio and Rachel. So perhaps a wider question of the skill set that you're looking to hire right now.
That we as a company are looking to hire right now. So, great question. So we actually I was having a debate this morning with one of the other executives, right? And actually it was more of a conversation versus debate, but the conversation was really around as we adopt and we're getting more and more technology focused on moving up the hype cycle faster and faster. Architects are very important. I mean, there has to be an architectural need and discussion, but it's an architect with a certain mindset, right? And I think you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday too. Was how do we look at architects that are security minded, and that's difficult, right? Architects are great when it comes to the actual prepping everything for the engineer, getting it ready, getting it into a more ready state. We're making that more and more a part of product development right up front versus like more backend, because that's something that we learned the hard way. So we try to integrate them as fast as possible. So architects are definitely very important to the ecosystem development. But then being able to explain down to the other ranks, how this impacts them. So today, what we kind of see is architects working more and more with the security and compliance officers of the company jointly, versus a new role that hasn't been defined yet, right? It's going to be very hard to hire for that role, so we're going to have to supplement with security personnel as well. So, and then for us, I mean, we have the normal scale out. I mean, we do quite a bit of engineering, so we have a lot of NOC, SOC, cloud engineer 1, level 2, 3, et cetera, right? So we're doing quite a bit of that kind of hiring. One thing I didn't even hit upon, which is again another thing that's kind of driving some of this market demand and need, is container services. I didn't even touch upon that. I mean, there's a whole that could be a whole conversation on its own, right? But we are hiring and building out more people that are container focused, right? And that's on the DevOps side and also on the support side. So we see that as a more growing demand as that enables. And again, you have to have security people to kind of understand the services. This is where MSSPs can really differentiate and can start becoming thought leaders in the space, because a lot of these positions haven't even been defined yet from a market perspective, right? Companies are doing it, but they're doing it more as a one-off right now versus like a true market adoption.
No, I love it, and secure containerization and sec DevOps that goes along with it is a key topic. I hope we'll touch on it a bit later as well, but no, that's really good. Well, I guess we are sort of out of time, but maybe if we asked, what do you hope we can perhaps achieve today? We're still interested in that end user MSS MSP relationship. What do you think we can hope to get out of today's conference?
I'm hoping that the MSSPs that are looking at today, and also security professionals that are joining the call and the webinar, that they're able to see that the market is just, because of chaos, it's just shifting so quickly right now. All you can do is try to embrace the chaos and see that and adapt as these changes are going on. Because again, the workforce really drives the business. So wherever the workforce is, and we always say the application drives the business, which is true. At the end of the day, there is an application that is supported, or a set of applications, but really, what are those applications for? So typically to support the workforce. So they kind of feed each other, right? And so you can see from an extreme position right now with COVID, what happened when workforce realignment happened, right? Businesses still have to continue to service clients and continue to do their product line offerings and continue to go that route. But the workforce enablement from a security perspective really changed. I mean, changed completely, right? It changed a lot of companies, 100%. So there's, from an MSSP perspective, I think there's several buckets here of opportunity. Number one, there's a bucket opportunity, just knowing that there's new emerging technologies that are coming out, and there are very little experts around these technologies. Embracing technology stacks, take a couple of gambles and risks. Don't drop out your entire business stack, but realign a couple of your people to be more front facing and to be more on cutting edge. That would be one of the things I would hope will come out of this conference. The other thing too is look at the chaos that has been developed and look at opportunity there with your existing customer base or net new clients, right? Where the questions are being asked of, I understand you went to a remote workforce, now you're rebounding back. What are you doing with that remote workforce environment? How is it being supported? Who's actually taking care of it? Did you audit it? Would you like just a friendly audit on that to see if we catch any big holes, right? Some of those things that I can tell you many organizations have not done, and they're not they rush to market, and because of that rush, there's a lot of open potential open and attack vectors that are out there, right? So but exploring those attack vectors and trying to close them up. I think that's another opportunity for the MSP market. And the third would be that because of all these changes and potential, understanding that enterprises have needs from just as a business, from an employee perspective, that are just not being fulfilled today. I mean, they're lacking, right? So they're very hard to fulfill, and they're not even well-defined job roles today. So and they're typically evolving hybrid skill sets. So I honestly think if you have a good security engineer that has an architectural mindset, it's probably easy to get them into that conversation versus going the other route, which is getting a good architect and getting more security minded, right? I think that it's going to be a bigger uphill battle for them.
I love it. Well, we can explore that, in our panel that you're on later today, where we're thinking about confidential compute and a trust algorithm. I think that'll be an excellent thing, and perhaps by then we'll have determined if we've met some of the metrics for the conference, hopefully. Well, we are now out of time. So please, thank you very much, Ian. Thank you to PhoenixNap. Please give in a wonderful virtual round of applause. And we look forward to seeing you this afternoon and throughout the day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. See you soon.
Take care.